Let us talk about insurance and whether you have coverage. That is a very common question when it comes to insurance. Do I have coverage or not? Now, let's take, for example, you went to a coffee shop, you parked your car outside, you left your laptop in the car, and you came out and the car is in flames. Your car is damaged or completely destroyed, and presumably so is your laptop. Now, you're very distraught, and then you remember that you have renter's insurance. So, do you have coverage? For this example, I'll be using a Lemonade renter's policy, and we're going to go through this policy to see if you have any coverage at all for the loss of your vehicle and the loss of your laptop as a result of a fire of unknown origin. Now, the first step would be to look at your declarations page. Your declarations page tells you what type of insurance you have, who is covered, what is the time period during which your policy will be active, and what amounts of coverage you have. You'll also see a list of all the documents that are included as a part of your insurance policy. Now, let's start off by looking on your declarations page to see what is covered. Now, as you can see, there is some coverage for personal property. So that's a start, right? Your vehicle, that's a personal property. Your laptop, that's also a piece of personal property. There are other potentially useful coverage here. We see loss of use. Maybe that could cover the loss of use of your vehicle or your laptop. We see personal liability. That would not apply here. Not necessarily, unless someone is saying that this was your fault and you caused some sort of damage as a result of that fire. We see medical payments. In our example, no one has suffered any injury, so that probably would not apply. And we see portable electronics. So that may also apply because we're talking about your laptop. It probably would not apply to your vehicle. So first thing, let's look at what is actually covered. Now, if we go to the coverage section dealing with personal property, we will see the agreement by the insurance company to cover your property. So there's a definition here of what is covered, and it says we cover personal property owned or used by an insured. Now, you'll notice that insured is in quotation, and that has a meaning. That means that there's a special definition for the word insured. Now, in this policy, that word is in quotes, but other policy may put that word in bold or some other way to designate that that word has a special meaning. So whenever you see a word written like that, either in quotes or in bold or some other way to stand out, it's telling you that that word has a special definition and you need to find that definition in the policy. So it says we cover personal property owned or used by an insured. Again, we'll have to see what insured means, while it is anywhere in the world. So this is a renter's policy. So you would think that it covers things inside the property that's being rented. But if we look at this definition, it's actually much broader than that. So any property that you own, wherever it's located, whether it's at home, whether you took it with you when you went to a trip in Hawaii or Las Vegas, it would be covered under this definition. And there is some other property that's included, which probably isn't relevant in our example, but it may also cover property owned by other people in your home. So you have to look at exactly what is covered, and it may be more or less than what you may initially think is covered. Now, your vehicle, that is property that you own or use, and that was located somewhere in the world. So is your laptop. So good so far. Let's keep going. Now, if we scroll down, we see that there are certain limits. It says there are certain limits on liability, and there's a list of different limits. Now, if we go down to J, we'll see that on portable electric, if we go down to J, we'll see that on portable electronic equipment, which includes your laptop, would be included, there's a limit of $1,500. So it may cover your laptop, but there's a limit of $1,500. So if your laptop was $5,000, they would not pay $5,000. They would pay maximum $1,500 so far. Now, it's also important to look at what is not covered. So remember, they start out with a very broad definition of what's covered, right? Any property that you own or use anywhere in the world that it's located. That may have gotten you excited, but you have to look at all the things that are excluded or not included, right? So there's a section that says property not covered. And then it says we do not cover, and there's a list. So C says they don't cover motor vehicle. They don't cover motor vehicles, and that includes the motor vehicle and also any parts or equipment that goes along with it. So in our example, you lost your vehicle and you lost your laptop. Based on section 4C, your vehicle is not covered. And you see that motor vehicle is in quotes. That means it has a special meaning. It probably won't include, this meaning probably will include your vehicle. So far, we see that your motor vehicle is out. That's not covered. Maybe you need to look at your auto policy to see if you have coverage. And we see that our laptop is limited to $1,500, which is fine if you have an $800 laptop, but if you had a more expensive laptop, then that may be an issue. Now, let's look at the loss of use coverage. The loss of use coverage will cover additional living expenses and things like that. Now, it doesn't cover loss of use of your actual personal property, just loss of use of your residence. So that's not helpful. Now, you are required to actually go through your whole policy to see what coverages are excluded, but we're going to skip through. Okay, so to recap, personal property is covered wherever it's located. But so far we've seen a section that limits electronic mobile equipment to just $1,500. And so far we see that our vehicle is not covered. Let's move on to what perils were insured against. Now, we know that certain personal property is covered, but is it covered for any type of damage whatsoever? No. There's a section that explains what kinds of damages or what kinds of causes are covered. So section 1, fire or lightning. Now in our example, we said your car caught fire, so that would be covered. And maybe we don't need to go through all of these, but the cause of the damage needs to be one of these things. So windstorm or hail, that's not applicable. An explosion, maybe that's applicable in our vehicle if there was also an explosion. Riot or civil commotion, that would be covered. If an aircraft damaged your property, that would be covered. If vandalism or malicious mischief damage your property, that would be covered. If there's a theft, that would be covered. So you have to look to see what kinds of causes are covered. And if your property was damaged by one of these things listed, then that's good news for you. But don't get too excited yet, because there is the dreaded exclusion section. Now, in your exclusion section, it lists a number of things where even if the property is covered, even if the type of damage, the type of cause of the damage is covered, there are also these exclusions that you have to look out for. So ordinance or law, there is no indication that that's important here. Earth movement, so if somehow there was an earthquake and that caused a fire, that could get tricky. Water, there's no coverage due to water. There's no coverage due to power failure. And then look at number 7. There's no coverage due to intentional loss. So if you set the vehicle on fire on purpose, then that would not be covered. So even though your laptop is a covered piece of property, even though fire is a covered loss, there would still be an exclusion if you were the one who set the fire, and that's exclusion number 7 in our policy that we're reviewing. Now remember that every policy is different, and so the definitions may be different, the property that's covered may be different, each policy is different, and so it's very important for you to go through your specific policy. Now, in addition to the exclusions, there are also these conditions. So even if there is coverage and it's not excluded, there are these conditions that you have to contend with. One of the main section would be the duties after you suffer a loss. So you walked outside the coffee shop, your car is on fire, your laptop was in there. What happens next? Your insurance company is not going to find you and pay you, right? You have to do certain things. And in this policy, the first thing that you have to do is give prompt notice. Now notice it doesn't say written notice, it doesn't say by phone, it doesn't say you have to call. So right here it just says give notice. So however you give the notice, that should be fine. Let's look at number 5. You have to cooperate with the investigation. That means if they ask you for documents, you need to provide documents. That means if they ask you to do a recorded statement, you have to do a recorded statement. And if they request some sort of written, notarized proof of loss, then you need to present that as well. So far it appears that we would have coverage for our laptop, and if we do these things in the conditions, then we should be paid for a laptop, assuming we did not cause the loss intentionally. Now, another part of the policy that's always important are the endorsements. Endorsements change just things in the policy. So everything that we went through could be changed by an endorsement at the end of the policy. Now you may ask, why didn't they just put the correct information in the main policy And I would say that's a very good question. But you have to look at the end of the policy to see if there are any endorsements that actually change the policy. Now, here's an endorsement that may be applicable. And this is an endorsement that increased the special limits for portable electronic device or portable electronic equipment. Now, remember that we saw earlier that your laptop would be covered up to $1,500. Now, this is a section that changes that part of the policy. So it says covered C, personal property, paragraph 3, item J. And this is what it should say. Now let's go and look at the original version. So covered C for personal property, number 3, which would be the special limits of liability, and then we'll go to J, and that's where we saw the $1,500 limit for the electronic equipment. Now, what this endorsement is saying is we have to replace this section with this section. So now it should be that it's the limit shown in the schedule, right? It's not 1,500 anymore, it's the limit shown in the schedule. So now we need to find the schedule to see what the limit is. And if we look right here, we see portable electronics, the schedule, the amount would be $2,000. So because of this endorsement, there is an extra $500 worth of coverage for your electronic devices. Now, this seems simple, but here's where it could become a problem. Now, let's say the insurance company, the adjuster, thinks that you set the fire on purpose. Then they would deny the claim. They would say, yes, there was a fire, yes, your laptop was destroyed, but we think you set the fire on purpose, and so we're not going to make any payments. And if they say that, what are you going to do? You're going to say you didn't do it, but they'll probably still just deny the claim. Another way that consumers can get in trouble is if they fail to give prompt notice. Now, it says prompt notice. What is prompt? Does prompt mean the same day? Does prompt mean 2 weeks later? And so that's kind of that's left to interpretation. It just says prompt, right? It's 2 weeks prompt. Maybe they'll say 2 weeks is not prompt, right? Best practice, you call them the same day. And if you call them the same day, they can't really say you did not give prompt notice. Another way that consumers can get in trouble is the requirement that the consumer participate in the investigation. Now, let's say your insurance adjuster asks you to provide receipts, and you don't have the receipts. You say, I bought this a year ago, I don't have the receipts. Then the adjuster could deny your claim and say you didn't cooperate. We asked you for documents and you didn't provide them. And you're saying, hey, I don't have what you're asking me for. But too late, claim already denied. Now let's say they ask you for documents, you provide the documents, they want more documents. So they ask for your receipt for the laptop and you provide them with the receipt. And then they say, okay, well, how did you pay for it? Did you pay for it with a credit card? Let us see the credit card receipt. And then you said, I guess. And then you provide the credit card receipt. And then they say, but How did you get the money to pay your credit card bills? We would like evidence of how you paid your credit card. And then you say, what are you talking about? Just pay me pay for my laptop. I had insurance. Then they'll deny your claim and say you didn't cooperate. Now, if they ask you to do a recorded statement and you did not make yourself available to do the recorded statement, they could deny the claim and say you did not cooperate. So there are many different kind of traps that would cause you to lose coverage, even though it appears that you should have had coverage. Again, there's a broad statement explaining what would be covered, and then the rest of the policy just kind of chips away at that. And there are a lot of different ways that you could mess up and lose coverage. All right, now that's it. If you have an insurance issue and you want us to take a look at your policy and review the facts of your case, we would be happy to do that. Again, there is no charge for us to do that for you.